Longest fingernails. Most people cut their fingernails because eventually they become inconvenient. One woman looked at that idea and said, no thanks. Meet Diana Armstrong from Minnesota. In 2022, Guinness World Records officially measured her fingernails and confirmed they had reached a combined length of over 42 feet, which is roughly the length of a school bus, attached to a human being. At that point, those are no longer fingernails, those are side quests with cuticles. Because from a distance, records sound fun. Then you remember somebody actually has to live like this. Think about every normal thing you did today. Putting on a hoodie, opening a door, looking for your phone, trying to grab literally anything without accidentally speedrunning property damage. Now imagine doing all of that while carrying around 42 feet of keratin for decades. That is not just commitment. That is a subscription you forgot to cancel in 1997. The strangest part is that Diana spent more than 25 years growing them. 25 years. Some people cannot commit to drinking water after downloading a hydration app. This woman committed to fingernails for a quarter of a century. And the longer you think about it, the weirder it gets. Because at some point, the record stops being about nails. It becomes a lifestyle. Like, you do not own the record anymore. The record owns you. Every decision starts revolving around it. Every routine changes. Every accidental bump becomes a jump scare. Imagine spending 25 years building something and then losing it because you reached for a bag of chips like a normal person. That level of pressure would turn me into a different person. I would stop opening doors. I would stop hugging people. I would start moving through life like a museum exhibit with anxiety. And somehow, this is considered one of the normal Guinness World Records. Because the deeper you look into these records, the more it feels like humanity collectively decided, what if hobbies came with consequences? Longest tongue. Human tongues are supposed to stay inside your mouth. Feels like a reasonable rule. One man looked at that rule and somehow turned it into a Guinness World Record. Meet Nick Stobril from California. In 2012, Guinness World Records officially measured his tongue at 10.1 centimeters from the tip to the middle of his closed upper lip, which doesn't sound that impressive until you actually see it. Then it becomes significantly harder to focus on anything else, because at some point his tongue stops looking like a body part and starts looking like a feature. The kind of feature a video game character accidentally gets after somebody drags the customization slider too far. And the strangest part is that he didn't train for this. He didn't spend years preparing. He didn't wake up one morning and decide, you know what? Tongue. He just won the genetic lottery in the weirdest category imaginable. Imagine discovering that your most valuable asset is something you normally use to taste soup. That's a difficult conversation to have with yourself. Meanwhile, everybody else is trying to become famous through talent, hard work, or extraordinary achievements. This guy opened his mouth and accidentally entered the history books. And once you start looking through Guinness World Records, you realize something important. Some records are earned, some records are practiced, and some records feel like reality accidentally generated a bonus character. Which raises a very uncomfortable question. If this is what people are born with, what happens when somebody starts modifying themselves on purpose? If this is your first time here and you somehow enjoy learning things you can never emotionally recover from, subscribe. Anyway, things are about to get significantly less reasonable. Pierced person. The majority of people get a piercing and call it a day. Maybe two if they're feeling adventurous. One man looked at that limit and treated it like a tutorial level. Meet Rolf Buchholz from Germany. In 2012, Guinness World Records confirmed he had over 450 piercings across his body. More than 170 of them were in his face alone. At that point, you are no longer accessorizing, you are loading assets, because every piercing starts the same way. Someone says, I'll just get one. That is how it begins. Nobody walks into a piercing shop thinking, my final form is going to require airport security to hold a staff meeting. Yet somehow, here we are. Imagine opening the character customization menu and refusing to press done. Every normal person eventually stops. Rolf apparently kept finding empty slots. Ear, occupied. Eyebrow, occupied. Lip, occupied. Face, fully booked. At some point, his body stopped being a body and became a limited time event. And honestly, the weirdest part is how normal it probably felt over time. Piercing number 1 probably felt like a huge decision. Piercing number 400 probably felt like updating an app. Bug fixes, performance improvements, added 3 new face attachments. That's what happens when humans commit to something long enough. The strange becomes routine. The impossible becomes maintenance. And eventually you stop asking, why would somebody do that? And start asking, how many more slots are even available? Because once people realize they can customize themselves this much, hair starts looking like wasted vertical space. Tallest Mohawk. Most people get a haircut because their hair is getting too long. One man looked at that process and decided to take it in the exact opposite direction. Meet Kazuhiro Watanabe from Japan. In 2011, Guinness World Records officially measured his mohawk at over 3 feet 8 inches tall, which means this man's haircut was taller than some toddlers. At that point, your hair is no longer hair. It's architecture. And the craziest part is that it reportedly took years of growing, styling, and maintenance to reach that height. Years. Imagine dedicating that much time to making sure your head has its own skyline. Every morning, most people wake up and think, what am I wearing today? This guy had to wake up and ask, is my haircut structurally sound? Because once your hairstyle becomes taller than a kitchen counter, you're not dealing with fashion anymore, you're dealing with engineering. And honestly, that's what makes Guinness records so strange. The record itself is only one number. The interesting part is the life required to support it. Somewhere along the way, a haircut stopped being a haircut and became a long-term construction project. Imagine trying to explain this to your ancestors. Thousands of years of human evolution eventually produced a man who looked at his hair and thought, let's see how high we can take this. And somehow, that still isn't one of the most ridiculous ways humans have spent their time. Because some people looked at world records and decided balancing random objects was the better use of an afternoon. Most spoons balanced. At some point in human history, somebody looked at a spoon and thought, wonder how many of these I can attach to my body. Unfortunately, that person found out. Meet Dalibor Jablanovic from Serbia. In 2016, Guinness World Records recognized him for balancing 79 spoons on his body at the same time. 79, not in a drawer, not on a table, on himself, which immediately raises several questions. The first is, why? The second is, how did you discover this talent? Because nobody accidentally finds out they can do this. You don't wake up one morning, spill silverware on your chest, and uncover your life's purpose. At some point, there had to be experimentation, practice, trial and error. Entire afternoons dedicated to seeing how many kitchen utensils could successfully cling to a human being. And somehow that's exactly what happened. The secret is that his skin can create enough suction to hold objects against it, which is a real sentence. A sentence that exists because Guinness World Records exists. Imagine spending years developing a unique human ability only to discover your superpower is becoming magnetic for cutlery, not metal, specifically spoons. If superheroes work this way, nobody would leave the house. And honestly, that's what makes these records so fascinating. Some people dedicate years to mastering music, sports, science. This guy looked at a spoon and unlocked a side quest nobody knew existed. The strangest part is that once you see somebody balancing nearly 80 spoons on their body, it becomes surprisingly difficult to predict what humans will do next. Because some people don't just collect unusual objects, they dedicate entire rooms to them. Largest rubber duck collection. Every collection starts the same way. One item, maybe two, something small, something harmless. And then sometimes a human being completely loses control of the situation. Meet Charlotte Lee from Washington State. In 2011, Guinness World Records recognized her collection of more than 5,600 different rubber ducks. 5,600. Not bath toys, not decorations, a small government. At that point, you're no longer collecting ducks, you're governing them. And honestly, the number is almost impossible to visualize. Most people have a junk drawer. Charlotte essentially had a duck infrastructure network. Imagine inviting someone over and discovering their house contains enough rubber ducks to populate a small village. At some point, you stop saying, oh, that's interesting, and start saying, how did we get here? Because nobody buys duck number 5,600 by accident. Duck number 3? Sure. Duck number 20? Maybe. Duck number 5,000? That requires long-term strategic planning. Somewhere along the journey, a normal hobby quietly transformed into a full-time side quest. And that's what makes collections so fascinating. The objects themselves usually aren't the story. The story is the commitment, the years spent searching, organizing, finding space for things that absolutely should not require this much space. Imagine explaining to your younger self that one day you would own thousands of the same animal made out of rubber. Not real ducks, not useful ducks, rubber ducks. And somehow, this is where Guinness World Records starts feeling less like a book of achievements and more like a museum of human decisions nobody stopped in time. Congratulations, I have officially ruined Guinness World Records for you.